host Lizette Zuno, and this is a podcast to help build your confidence, enhance your leadership skill at work and at home. Our mission is to equip, empower, and elevate and enhance women confidence all over the world, helping them reach their God given potential. So today I'm excited for another episode. My guest is Kimberly West. So Kimberly is a working mom. Let me bring her on. Kimberly is a working mom, a working wife, and a mom of two who value faith, family, harmony, and personal development. By day, she oversees all of the out-of-state recruitment for her altar mater, but in her spare time, she also loves pouring into people. As a natural developer, her passion to see others realize their full potential fueled the launch of her KPRW Consulting. Welcome, Kimberly, to the Up Your Confidence podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here today.
I'm so excited to have you. I've been wanting to have you on the podcast for the longest time, but thanks, we finally made it happen. So,
You
what
did.
we like to do, I always like to introduce my guests, how I actually know them and met
Yeah,
them. So, Kimberly, I don't want to say was my neighbor, but that's the truth.
I know. Was past tense. Very
Was my
fast.
neighbor, but I still consider you my neighbor. You've been my neighbor for, I will say, nearly more than 8 for sure,
Yeah.
7 to 8 years.
Yeah.
So, and we just hit it off. I think I'm not like somebody that make friend with neighbor like that, but Kimberly was just different, and we connect on so many level. And I love to cheer for her on anything she's doing. So I'm excited to have her on the podcast. I think it's gonna be fun. So let's start by saying, what do you do, Kimberly?
Well, I have two jobs. Well, I have a lot of jobs. So my first job that pays me, right, is I recruit high school students to the University of Oklahoma. And so I oversee all of our out-of-state recruitment, which is really great. It's really exciting. That's my alma mater. That's where I went to undergrad. My husband graduated from there. So that is my first job. Um, my second job, I guess, outside of the home would be the founder of KPRW Consulting. And that is where my passion lies these days. I really enjoy, like you read before my bio, pouring into people and hopefully having people develop interpersonal skills, right? Because we are
Mm.
lacking in those as a society, unfortunately. And then some training to like help them be better in general. So whether that's diversity, equity, inclusion, which in some places are very bad words these days,
Mm.
whether it's that or communication styles or emotional intelligence, just making sure that people's workplaces and places where they find themselves interacting with others, which could be anywhere, are smoother, right? And just um, hopefully develop people so they have better working relationships.
I love that. So one other question that I want to ask is, how did you get into it? Because I mean, your day job is probably a lot of recruiting and talking to people, but what fueled that passion directly for you?
That's a really good question. As an undergrad at OU, I was also well as a graduate student. I was a advisor to the Black Student Association on our campus,
Oh,
and
nice.
so advising their exec board and things of that nature. And that kind of probably snowballed into this pouring into of people, right? I advised actually a number of student organizations. That was my biggest one. And they would ask me to come do talks and things of that nature. I'm like, sure, I'll do it. And then as I kept doing it, I started really liking it. It drains me, but I do like doing it. And many years later, I said, I really want to do this thing. Like, I think I have a message for people. I think people can connect with me. And so in COVID, I had a baby in May of COVID. I turned 40 about 8 weeks after I had a baby. And in October, I was like, I want to start my own business. And my husband's like, what is happening? We're in a pandemic. You just had a baby. Like, what? I guess maybe it's a midlife crisis. I don't know.
It always
But I
is.
wanted to start this thing because I'd always been doing it. People asked me to speak, and I was like, I can do this. And I think I can give people some real cool nuggets to come away with and make their lives and their working relationships better. So, anyway, that's when I started KPRW. And people always ask, like, why KPRW? Like, what are those
What
letters?
does that mean? Yeah, I kind of knew, but tell us.
Right. It's every name that I've had. So I was born Kimberly Patrice Rutland, right? And then I got married
Mm.
and dropped the Patrice, moved to Rutland, became a West. And so it's all of who I am, right? And
That's
that's why I
true.
think of it. KPRW is everything that I have been from birth until now, and everything that I will be is encompassed in all four of those names. So I thought, why not just make it like a radio station, right? KPRW Consulting.
I didn't think about the radio station, but yes, what radio station? You could be a radio station with your Kimberly Keys. Who knows?
Maybe
So
I'll have my own podcast one day. Who knows?
who knows? I've been trying to tell you to have a podcast. So I was excited when I saw you start doing the Kimberly Keys because I was like, that is so cool. That is so because it's like maybe I don't want to talk too much for like 45 minutes on the podcast, right? But I can just give you cool nugget, and especially these days, the way people hear, they really hear in small sidebar. But I want to go back to communication style. We talk a lot about communication style on the podcast. I always have people bring it up. So when how does company decide, because I mean everybody lack it, on your either on your own or as a team. But I think the best approach is when you do it together as a team so you
Yeah.
can learn. So how do you get company to get interested in it?
That's a really great question. So I started in my office, like not charging them, but just doing it for free. And then I when I talk to people about it, I ask, do you find delays in projects getting done? Do you find like as the leader, people are coming to you upset about how someone spoke with them or didn't understand them? And if you answer yes to those questions, then you might need my communication styles, right? You
Nice.
might need to bring me in. And I just try to ease the pains of working with other people. The problem is we're never really taught how to work with other folks. We really aren't. We just end up being with people and don't really know and don't know understand how to like look at it through someone else's lens, try to put yourself
Right.
in someone's shoes. We say these things, we're never taught how to do them. And so in the communication style, we talk about the four pillars of communication. And then we also talk about each style. There's an assessment people take and it tells you the four different styles. And it's very
Right.
easy to remember and say, this person's probably thinking of it this way, so that when you go to them, you can put it in a way in which it's easily digestible for them and there isn't a breakdown in communication.
Oh, I like the way because I mean, I'm in tech, and usually when I go consult, I ask people like, what is your pain point? So it's kind of like
Mhm.
the same concept, but it's like, if you answer yes to this four question, you need my training. And most people will answer yes because even communicating with your kids or with your spouse is a thing. We
Yeah.
know.
So that's the thing I wanna try to get into, the communication style to get into, like, couples and
Yes,
do it at, marriage retreats, because I think
yes,
if people heard this, it would change,
it will.
like, how you talk to people.
Yes, and one of the thing actually, well, let's talk about this because this is important. One of the things that I, for the longest time, is anything that I learn in personal development for myself, for my work, I try to apply it, directly. Because I'm like, the number one person you communicate with every day is your husband. First of all, right? You wake
Yep.
up with him, you do everything with him. So I'm always like, I remember when I took the first time I took disc, I was like, this I know what I am, but I'm already trying to figure out like what is my partner so that I can see how to communicate with him. And then
Correct.
while I'm doing the training, I remember a long time ago I did this Dell Carnegie training, and they were
Mhm.
asking about different way to listen. So I'm like, oh, okay, listen. I even took like a long 3 day training on listening. But everything that I learned, communication or leadership, I'm always applying, and I don't tell him. Maybe if you
No,
listen to this podcast, he's gonna find out. But I'm like low key, applying it to my husband and to my marriage. Literally, like, I'm listening to understand. I'm not listening to just jump in and give
respond.
my 5 point now. Do I do well every day? Probably not. But the intention is there, and I think it has tremendous help. I literally just apply whatever I learn, in my leadership course to home.
Yeah,
And I'm amazed why a lot of people don't do that. Like for me, I'm like, why do we act some way at work, like all proper and I'm gonna do this, and then when we get home, we just throw everything out.
totally different. Yeah, it's so funny when I do the assessment and talk about all the things, people are always like, "Can I take one of these home for my husband? Can I take one of these home for my wife?" And I'm like, "Yeah,
That's
you
me.
can." Yeah. I think they always say, I think I know what they are, but I want them to take the assessment just to be sure. And I'm like,
Yes,
feel free, feel free. But that's why I know there's a need in that
there's
market for
huge
people to,
need.
yeah. So I'm trying to figure out a way to break into that market with that specific one, the communication styles. I think it would be really helpful for people because even my
E-
husband, I know he hasn't taken the assessment, but I know based on all the times I've given this and examples that I have what he is. And so when
mhm.
I get frustrated or if I'm trying to communicate to him a certain way, I use different words to talk to him so that he gets it versus me being frustrated like in the first 2 or 3 years of our marriage. I'm like, why aren't you doing it this way? Because that's just not who he is as a person. So it's
Yes,
interesting. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy it because they have these when I do the presentation, they have these light bulb moments. You can see it clicking in their brains as to why they're not communicating well with their boss or with this colleague or whatever the case may be. You see it happening. And people have emailed me later or come up to me later and say, this really helped me in X, Y, and Z. And so I know that's how I know there's a need to keep doing it because we're really helping people be better, I think, in
yeah, and
communicating with
those are
folks,
like
which is what we do.
skill. And like you mentioned, nobody teach you this skill. I actually remember that I remember that I took a communication class in college, but I don't remember what I learned in that class. Like it was just a class that I had to take and check 3 hour credit, but
Congratulations.
I don't remember what I learned. And I think I learned a lot more, in my career, as a leader than just anything that I learned in college. So there's a lot of value in that. Now let's shift gear and talk about DEI, because that is a world. I might need a sip of water or just to calm my spirit down. But
Water or wine? Which one?
no, water, water, water. Yeah,
Okay.
water. It's too early. No,
Look,
but DEI, I don't even know where to start because it seems I know where to start. It seems that I have like three different way I want to ask this question, but let me just ask the first one. It seems in my experience that people get interested in DEI when they get in trouble. You
yeah.
know, there's no preventive way to
Mm,
learn about DEI. It's only when people get in trouble, let's say there was a situation with Starbucks a couple of years ago, right? Some employee did something, I don't remember what it was, but then, Starbucks like launched this whole DEI stuff. It's always after the fact. The same thing happened during COVID, or while we had the Joy Floyd
yeah.
situation, then, oh my God, everybody DEI, DEI. So first of all, why is that?
Mm.
What is in our human capacity that we don't have the ability to understand that DEI is a game changer? That's what I always say. DEI is a business need.
Mm.
DEI is something that can actually be a KPI, that you can use to advance your business, but we always see it as after the fact.
Well, I think in the US specifically, DEI, the reason why it's always reactive is because we don't want to
Exactly.
acknowledge the history of our country and the place and where we stand. That's exactly, I
Right.
mean, that's the only reason why. And so everything's going to be reactionary because we don't want to have hard conversations and face the hard truth that our country and the way in which it came to be and be
Mm-hmm.
this great superpower is on the backs of Black people, right? No one wants to really admit that. And then to also go a step further and say, on the backs of Black people, right, was a lot of wealth was built, and then you kept that wealth from people, and the ability, upward mobility was stolen or never given, I should say, and that puts us here. So no one wants to acknowledge that, and since we don't want to acknowledge it and face the hard truths and have the hard conversations and dismantle it, it will always be reactionary. It will never be proactive, because we don't want to face those hard truths.
I love that answer, and it just reminded me because you're not from Oklahoma, but you went to school in Oklahoma, you Oklahoma, so you know this story about the Oklahoma Wall Street, the Black Wall Street, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Where
yeah.
it just and it's so heartbreaking. And even even if you don't know anything, and I just realized apparently that, because I didn't go to high school here or middle school, like
Yeah.
these are the things that I don't even taught. This is part of it's like literally the history is intentionally erased. And
Correct.
now people are in the 40 and 50 and they're just learning about this. And thank God, they are survivor of this event and they can actually show up and say, yes, this happened to us. These are the, remain of. If you know anything about me, you know that I'm a knowledge broker. I mean, every time I find something that is good and working for me, I cannot wait to share it. And that's the case with Black Girl Vitamin. I have been dealing with a lot of personal health since 2 months ago. And I'm lacking my vitamin D, my cholesterol is high, my sleep is not well. So some of my joints are hurting me, and just I need my skin to look beautiful. And I have been taking some pills here and there. Then I stumbled upon Black Vitamin after I came back from one of my women conference. Then I love it. I order my pack. Within a week, I could see the difference. I could see my energy. I could see the glow. So I really want to tell you, get into Black Vitamin. I'm getting my vitamin D from them. I'm getting my collagen from them. I'm getting my cholesterol from them. I'm getting my CMO from them for energy and to boost my immune system. I could not be any happier. And again, woman owned, Black brand. That's what we love on the Up Your Confidence podcast. So get into it. Use the link below here and get into Black Girl Vitamin. It's going to change your game. It's going to make you happy. It's going to make you glow. Thank you.
Black Wall Street until the 100-year anniversary of it, right? These are adults
Right.
that I work with and whom I love, and they weren't taught about it. So it makes me wonder what other things happen in our
Whoa.
country that no one's there to tell about it. No one's there to like relive it and verbally tell the story to people. I mean, not just for Black people, for our native friends, for our Latinx, like anybody who was an underrepresented person in this society. The amount of terrible things have happened in this country in particular, right? We're not talking about the whole world. And this
Mm-hmm.
in the US in particular has got to be outrageous, right? And we just know the effects of it. And sometimes we don't even know the real true account of what happened, which is really sad.
Yeah, that's really sad. But the good news is we have a lot of DI experts out there that are trying to do I say the Lord work, And I read an article couple of years ago, I want to say less than 2 years, that I say all the people that have executive position in
Mhm.
company and doing DEI, they all got exhausted, after 2020. And I think this article was like around 2022. Like they've been like working around the clock for 2 years and they still the people got tired. The people doing the work got tired.
Right.
So I have this question. What is the goal of DEI at the end of the day? Is the goal of DEI to eradicate racism or
Mhm.
to give us just equity?
So I actually think it's probably both of those, right?
Okay.
To break down the system that the racist system, right? That has got to be one part. The other part is to, like you're saying, just to educate people and to make them understand how we got to be here. So yes, redlining and the unfair practices and all this other stuff, we want to get rid of that. We want to, but in addition, you got to change people's minds and hearts, right? You got to open up their eyes and to see that we are all humans. We're all having a very human experience on this planet together. And the color of our skin, the way, whoever, our relationships, whatever we're doing that makes us different, does that make us less than? And I actually think they're both really, really difficult, but I actually think undoing people's thoughts is harder than dismantling a system. And I don't know when we're going to get to a point where we can be like, we've arrived. I'm not sure when
Yeah.
or if.
I think it start let me back let me backtrack. I don't want to say that yet. That I think it started in two different ways. I think the way we're approaching it right now, DEI is usually from a company perspective, right? So we're
Correct.
telling companies, diversity is good for your business. At least that's what I do from a tech perspective. When I go to conference, I'm like, it's not just about diversity, but it's about diversity of thought. I'm in testing, I do quality. I always tell people like if you bring your product out, the people that are testing your product, they need to look like your customer, So that's just an easy way for me when I'm building a team to just say, okay, this is gonna be a global product according to you guys. So the least I can do is just have a people that look like a mini ward here to do the product, to test the product, right? But then when you say that, and I was at a conference once, and one lady got up, very nice lady, and she asked me a very good question that I never thought about. She's like, okay, Lizette, you telling us about all this DEI stuff you want us to bring into our company. And if I remember, I think she was like Latinx, if I remember correctly. She could be Latinx or Indian, but one of those. Then she said, but this what happened is there's a retaliation that happened because
Mm,
now others that are in the company, they're like, oh my god, they're bringing these people to take my job or to take my promotion. So
correct.
she was asking me a legit question. I was on stage, Q&A session after my DEI workshop, and I was like, I don't know if I gave you the right answer, so I'm gonna ask you the question. My
Okay.
answer that I gave her was like, you need to start not only at the top but also at the bottom.
Mhm.
The fact that we are bringing a diverse candidate doesn't mean, one, that they're not qualified.
Correct.
99% of the time they're overqualified. The
Mhm.
second thing is you need to realize that your company is doing that for your product, which I just mentioned, but also for the bottom line.
Mhm.
Because if you have more people using your product, your company is gonna make more money. If they make more money, you're gonna get better bonus. There won't be layoff. Like now, you need to hit with the economical part of why DEI matter. And then when
Mhm.
I said that, there was a huge applaud, and afterward, people were like, "Oh my god, I never heard such answer." But Kimberly, this answer was on top of my head, just like I came up with it like right there, and I still go back and like that is the interesting question because I never would have thought that people would think about like when we talk about DEI now, somebody is like they're taking my job. No, nobody's taking
Right.
your
It's
job.
just it's scarcity of resources, right? So people
Mm,
feel like because a person of color or whatever this hire comes in, then I can't get something. And that's it's what you said is true. It's literally untrue, right? Because the more, especially in business, the more people the more people your company can reach, right? The more money is coming into you, all that stuff, and it just goes into the whole funnel. But I think in terms of education and other aspects of society, people feel like there's a limited amount of folks who can get up, right? Who
mm,
can move it. And since they do, they feel like then a black person or a woman or whatever the case may be is taking their position. And I think that we have to go away from that scarcity mindset,
yeah.
right? And the other piece is when you have, as a person of privilege, when you have been at the top and had all these things come to you, when you're righting the wrongs, being on the same level as someone else feels like injustice when you've already been at privilege. But you're just
Mm,
literally now we're all on the same playing field. But to
right.
you, as a privileged person, it feels like that's not fair, right? But this other person has had to work so hard to get up to where you are, right?
Yes.
So I think people don't understand that because privilege in our country is rarely talked about. That's a relatively
It's
new,
actually a scary word for some people when you say, "Oh,
very
you
scary,
privileged." They're like, "Oh no, I am not."
very
But you
scary.
are privileged. Just the mere fact of the way you raise and the color of your skin, you are privileged, and
You're
you need
privileged.
to learn to accept that.
Yep. And we all have different privileges. Like, for instance, I'm not a first generation college student, right? Going to
Right,
college, my parents went to college, so we understood this process. I have privilege in that.
right,
I'm also a Christian, and being a Christian in America gives you some privilege. You get your holidays off, you get things that you celebrate off.
nice,
But other religions um, don't have the same privilege I do, right? I'm also heterosexual, and that comes with a privilege. I don't have to I didn't have that special permission to get married. Like all of these things,
right,
there are
right.
privileges in all aspects of life.
Yes,
There are quite a few white privileges, right? If you're
yes.
white, you're male, and you're heterosexual, you hit the
You
jackpot.
you you check.
Everything is open for you. So there are aspects of it that I realize I have to use my privilege in ways to help people who
Mm,
don't have that privilege. And I think
right,
for folks who have had privileges all for generations, it's really
right.
hard to see that you have it.
Yeah, and they get scared of like losing that privilege. For
Correct.
me, I never thought about the other flip side of it. So I've always wondered if that was a good response that I gave. But the other thing that you mentioned, let's stay in the DI a little bit. you mentioned about, dismantling the system.
Mhm.
And how do we dismantle the system? Okay, we doing all this workshop at work. Because did you know that me, I only learned about microaggression in 2017 or 2018? I
Yeah.
swear to God, as privileged educated that I think I am, like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm in tech, I'm so smart. The first time I heard about microaggression was on a webinar, like a Diversity Inc. website
Mhm.
webinar. And the lady was like explaining, and I was like, wait a minute, this has happened to me my whole adult life. And I
100%.
didn't even have a word to it. And I just had to, like, literally, the webinar shook me so much. I had to pause it and reflect on, like, okay, microaggression, XY. Like, she was doing like you, like, if you have been through this, it's called microaggression. I was like,
Right.
ooh. Like, one example was like when people talk about your hair.
Yeah.
Girl,
That's the one that hits me every time because I know there's a lady in my job who was very kind and I actually love her. And she said to me, I worked in with my hair straightened. And she was like, I actually prefer your hair straight. And I was like,
you don't have any preference.
there's no preference. There's no preference on my hair.
Yes,
It's my
yes,
hair. You know,
yeah,
I mean, my husband says that about me, about my hair.
yeah, but that's him.
Yeah,
Yes.
but like seriously, no. Yeah, there are a lot of things that you're just kind of like, oh, that was inappropriate for you to say,
And then
and I hear you.
I had another lady. I was like an executive in the company, and she meet me, and she's like, I'm not saying a project manager, but she's like maybe two or three level down to me, the
Mhm.
direct report. But she meet me in the bathroom, and she's like, baby girl. I was the first time I heard it, I went back into the bar in the lot and closed the door. I was like, did I just hear her call me, hey baby
Baby
girl?
girl. We went to OU football game earlier this year, and there were some young people sitting behind us, much younger than us. And OU was not doing, we were not playing well. And the young men behind us kept calling the gentlemen on the field boys, those boys. And I'm like, these are grown men. They can vote and drink and whatever. These are grown men. Do not call them. That's a microaggression. You cannot call them a
Yes.
boy.
Yes.
So it happens a lot.
It happens a lot. So when I was like, if I didn't know, I wonder how many people. So I start using the right word. Let's call it what it is, and let's just call it what it is. And I start catching my team member, because I used to have a diverse team, Indian, Asian, So then all this trope that people have, like people smell, people do this. I'm like, that is a microaggression, ladies and gentlemen,
Yeah.
and you need to just get yourself educated. So I think there's a good value into all this DEI training, because guess what? I learned about this in a DEI training provided by the organization.
Correct. And I think people, even people that we would say aren't racist or whatever, people that are well-meaning, very kind,
Yes,
say these things not knowing they're microaggressions. There are people, you're
exactly.
right. You have to every time you hear it, you got to call it out and be like, we're not doing that.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
then I think, because for me, my goal was like, let's define the people that are well meaning, but they're just using the wrong word. They're
Mhm.
just doing the wrong thing.
Yep.
Those people, I call them ignorant. Let's educate them. And I think with a little bit of education, those are the people that the DI is hitting. Now we have other people that are just on this other part of the spectrum, that are like deep, 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 just racist,
Right.
just flat out. Maybe
Racist.
they're old. I don't know if they're really old all ways, but they're just deeply not ready to make any change. And that's just how it is. So, but for me, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna say something bad. Those people are gonna die soon, like
Well, I mean,
there
so
will be
you're
a generation change.
correct. So I do another presentation called the generational divide, where we talk about each generation that's in the workplace now. We talk about how we communicate with them, how they came to be, and this, that, and the other.
Okay.
But so Generation Z is the last generation of a Caucasian majority, right? They will
Yes.
never know a world where there aren't people of all kind of races and things of
Like
that
a
nature.
good
And so,
mix spot.
yeah, that gives me a little bit of hope, right? Because
Right.
they're raised with it and they expect diversity and they celebrate it, everything. And so
Yes.
that there is hope that the people who want to stay in power due to racism and prejudices and all the
Mm-hmm.
other isms will slowly be removed, and we will have a new set of people with different morals, values, and hopefully some change. But
Yeah,
that's
that's
still a
the
big if.
yeah, that's the hope. But the other part that we have to realize is also is the new kids, the new kids coming on the scene better not be tainted by the parent, Oh, but
So
and you had like a situation. I don't know if you care to share with
I
us
will
on the
share.
podcast.
I will share. So my son goes to a Montessori that we love. It's great. It is very diverse. It is very diverse. But he did have a classmate tell him that she did not like people with brown and black skin. And my kid is almost 6. This is kinder essentially. And when he was telling me this, well, he told his dad first, and then I heard second. And so by the time his dad heard, I guess my husband had time to process. I was processing in the very moment of dealing with it. And I was like, what's her name? When did she say it? Tell me again. Why did she say this? I mean, everything. I was not a happy person. And we had put the kids to bed too. And then my husband was like, are you still upset? And I'm like, yes, I am very upset that someone at 5 or 6 years old would say that to my kid. And Lizette, we are very proactive parents in that I know that my kid's going to face racism. He's a black
Right.
man. Both my kids are black men. I get it. And so we prepared them for like our skin is beautiful. We read books about our skin. We read books about the diaspora. We know what's happening in the world. I'm not shying away from the fact that we went through slavery and all of these things. It was just that it happened so early. Like I was expecting it maybe
Too early
second,
for my
third grade.
taste.
Right. And my husband's response was like, this is the least of what's going to happen to them as black men in this country.
Oh
So we
gosh.
cannot be so upset about this one. And he's right. I mean, he's right. He's very right. But I really, I think Caden did not feel, he didn't seem like he was upset or hurt. It's just matter of fact. And he was like, my skin is beautiful. And you're right, your skin is beautiful and nothing to be ashamed of. So that's
Right.
great. But it was kind of a slap in the face of being like, this is reality. And this is what we're doing. We're still in a place where people are teaching their children, or at least letting their children overhear some of the terrible things that they think and believe about people. And it wasn't a good place to be in, that's for sure.
It broke my heart when I saw your post. I was like, it took. I mean, I told you in private how I felt multiple time, and I mean, just hearing again, it's still upsetting because
Yeah.
I have a little 6 year old boy too, and I mean 5 year and a half, but I don't want. I mean, for me, it's too early. Like, I don't want to have that conversation now. I
Mhm.
thought I was gonna have that conversation maybe at 13 or 14 or 15 when he start playing outside by himself,
Yeah.
but not like in a nice school where because that's another privilege that you think you have, and
Right.
that you're trying to put your kid in the best school, but it just tell you that the ism doesn't matter. He wear his ugly head at any given moment when you the least expect it.
Yeah, and I think that especially in terms of our children, we are going to continue to have that conversation. Like the conversation we had with Kaden last week is not going to be the end of it. We're going to have to have this conversation when he's out with his buddies and he's the only one that gets pulled over by the cops. Like we're gonna have to continually have this conversation as they get older, because until all these things we talked about before happen, the dismantling, the educating of people, until all of that happens, every every parent of a person who's black and or brown is going to have that conversation. And I think what made it so sad for me is I was telling my mom about it, and she said to me, she remembers. My mom was born in 1950. She remembers being out in public and a little girl wanting to use the colored water fountain, right? A little white
Mhm,
girl wanting to
mhm.
use the colored water fountain, and her mom not letting it. The little girl thought that the water was going to be different colors. She didn't
Ooh.
understand that, like, only black people use this water fountain. So her mom was like, "No, this fountain is dirty. We don't use that fountain." Right? So as a little kid, my mom remembers seeing this little girl and this back and forth with her mom. And so it was taught to her that this fountain is dirty and we don't use it because the black people use it, right? And the little girl's like, I just want some rainbow water, you know? And so if you think about and talking to her about her grandson experiencing, not to that level, but still experiencing something, there's
Mhm.
sadness there because we're wondering, when will we stop? When
Exactly.
exactly will we stop? And I don't know that there's an end to it anytime soon.
It's just it's just heartbreaking, because the thing is, and we talk a lot about this in 2020 when this was like out on the open, it's only black people that have to have that conversation, like we could be having conversation about stock, being financial, have financial freedom, or so many other things, but we have to carve out time in our day to have this conversation, like
Mhm.
for me, I'm okay to have the conversation, but I'm questioning, like, why do we have to do that, why can the system just fix itself so that we get equity and peace?
Oh, the system can't fix itself because the system is working for what was the majority,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I think it will take a long time, and I may not live to see it, but the system will be dismantled because people will call for the system being dismantled. The people won't allow for it in a couple of generations. So I think we're ways away from it, but I have hope.
I love your optimism. Like I love not only your optimism, but just the way you handle this whole situation. Cause and another thing for mom that have kids or black kids is nobody give you a manual about how to do this either. Emotionally, mentally, and paperwork wise.
Right. Because before that whole incident, my husband and I had conversation with our friends and other people about when do we talk to them about the hard stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we settle on. We will build them up, build their confidence up about who they are. And then when things happen, we will explain, right? Because you don't want to like damage their view of the world too soon.
Exactly. Exactly.
But you also want them to be prepared, right? So
Yes.
that's a really hard, and that is a conversation that people, that white people don't have to have with their kids, right?
Nope.
We have to have that
Nope.
with our kids because we know we've experienced it, we've gone through, we've been called out of our names, we've done all of these things, and so we know it's coming. But they don't have to have that conversation. They don't have to have that worry, which is a little bit.
Because you don't want to taint their relationship with their friend, or scare them, because you want them to experience new friend, new way of seeing people, new way of seeing the world, not through your lens of
Right.
whatever happened to you, but God, when it happened to them at that young age, it's just heartbreaking for me. And but then the other thing is parents, because I know people listen to this podcast, all kind of people listen to this podcast actually. I think there need to be a message. Maybe Kimberly, you probably the right person to give that message. What message should we just give to parents?
I think, and I said this in my Facebook post, I really want parents to understand that they're always listening. And so do I think, well, I think that young lady probably heard somebody say they don't like black or brown people. I think that. But
Clearly.
I do think that there are jokes made, that there are innuendos, like things are said
Mm,
around kids, and kids are way smarter than we give them credit for. They pick up on everything. And so
yeah.
I want us to be more careful as parents, even me as a parent, saying things about things that I believe that may or may not be true to your kids, because they repeat those, they take those full force, and they hold those things because to them, we are their superheroes at this point, right? They believe all the things that we tell them. And so when you're doing that, you want to be careful what you say around your kids, how you act around your kids, how you interact with other humans around your kids, because they're picking up, they're watching it, and they're internalizing that. And you never know how it's going to come forth. Just like I say, my kids are going to be the ones cursing at school because I use cuss words very liberally. As jokes and not in a mean way, just adds flair to my
Liberal. I
language.
like I like the liberally one.
Liberally. So I know. So if they call me and said, Caden said the S word in class, I'm like, he got that from me. Sorry about that. I'm going to try. So they're always listening. And so it's going to come up at some point. They're going to regurgitate it. They're going to throw it up back in your face or something, or at school, or to a classmate, or to a friend. So just be
Right.
careful what we're saying to our kids.
I love that. I love that because they just copy everything we do, and we are the superhero because we expect other people to teach our kids. I'm sure those parents are like, "Oh, I'm sending my kid to a diverse school," but you're not being diverse at home through
You know,
your thought and your thinking, and your kid just probably pick up on it.
right.
So I continue to like praise you for how you handled this situation, because I'm a learning. It's a work in progress for me. 'Cause-
Well, I can't say that I'm always going to handle it well. I'm not, because it
No,
will
I
happen
think
again.
I think you will. I think it's your professional way, of doing this. You have so many different experience and way of like just dealing with this, while me is just like emotionally one on one. Then we'll talk about, how it impact everybody else. But
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah, yeah.
let's get off this. But I know that you're doing the Kimberly Keys. Can you tell us what motivates you or inspire you to start doing that?
Oh my gosh, there are Kimberly's keys everywhere. Like I'll be talking to a friend and be like, "Oh, that's a key," and I have to stop and write it down. So it's just like little things. Like we were talking about my friend and I talking about plants the other day, and so there'll be a Kimberly's key in a couple weeks about plants because the way she talked about her plant growing, I was like, "Oh, this is how people should grow," you know. And
Right.
I credit my mom with those because when we were growing up, she always said there's a lesson in everything. I don't care what it was, she would stop and be like, "Here's your lesson," and so I now just see the lessons really plainly. So I'm really excited about it. People like it. I'm always surprised when I'm like out with friends or whatever, like, oh, you had a key about that. And I'm like, you actually listened to that?
Yes,
Great.
I do. I do. I don't know what time it coming, and I'm always traveling to different time zone. But when it coming, I'm like, oh, this. Let me listen to this. Then you go into the whole story. I'm like, she's good at this key thing, because God knows it's all kind of random stuff that just you be talking about a basketball player, you be
Yep.
talking about plant. But then I'm like, where is she going with this key? Now, what can we get to the key, Kimberly?
Look at
And
the
then at
key.
the end, I was like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
happy.
They're really fun. They're really
When
fun.
do they come? When do they come? Is it Monday or
They
Tuesday?
come on Tuesday mornings. I post
Okay,
them just
Tuesday
about
morning.
a little before 7 a.m.
Okay, maybe on my side of the world, I see it on Monday sometimes. So,
Oh, yeah. So Tuesday mornings, and I have an upcoming series on my Kimberly's Keys about emotional intelligence. So I'm excited about
oh,
that.
nice.
Yeah, I'm trying to be a little more intentional about how I plan them because they just come to me and then I'll record it and then I'll post it. So we'll see.
Cool, cool. One we getting toward the end. I love that you are playing into everything that you are passionate about. That's what we always preach on the Up Your Confidence podcast, because that's how you I feel like you shine and you get confidence. But our favorite question we like to ask all our guests, which is gonna be in my upcoming book. So you're gonna appear in my upcoming book.
I love it
What do you do to up your confidence every day?
every day. This is weird. I don't know what other people say, but in Michelle Obama's book, The Light We Carry, she talks about like talking to yourself, right? And
Oh, she did.
I
I didn't
literally,
finish that book yet.
it's really, really good. You should
Okay,
finish it.
okay.
Listen to it. Listen to it. So in the mornings when I'm brushing my teeth or washing my face or getting dressed, whatever, I'm in the front of the mirror and I tell myself, as a 44-year-old mother of two, you look amazing and you're killing it. I tell myself that every single day. You look great. You look so good today. This is
Yeah,
so
you
good.
look great anyway. Even if you don't tell yourself, I can tell you that.
But the
Yes.
thing is, I went through a phase shortly after I had my second one where I did not feel like I looked great. I didn't like the way my body looked post babies, right?
Hmm.
And so I had to come to a realization that this is what happens when you're a woman and you have children and you
Yes.
get older and this, that, and the other, and your hair falls out or whatever the case may be. And so outwardly, I tell myself I look great every day. And I actually believe it. I actually believe that I look amazing every single day. And I think that comes across in not an overconfident way or an arrogant way, but people are attracted to confidence, right?
Yes.
And so if
Yes.
you feel like you're confident, people are going to be attracted to you, even though you're just like doing your own thing, you know?
Yes.
So I think it's important that you tell yourself that and that you believe it and don't fish for those compliments from other everywhere else. You got to know it for yourself. So whatever it takes to get there, you got to get yourself there and just be happy that all the things you have survived in life have brought you to this
Hmm.
point and that you can look at yourself and say, I've done it. This
Yes.
body, this mind, this person has done all of this stuff and be proud of it.
This is a sermon. I love it. I love it. This is
Maybe
good.
it'll be at Kimberly's Keys one day. Who knows?
You need to be a Kimberly's, of course, of course. We can even cut this clip for you. You make it a Kimberly's
Thanks.
already.
Thanks.
No, that's wonderful, and this is my favorite part of the podcast, because you never know what people will say, and everybody's different. And I thought you were gonna make it as an affirmation, but it's actually not an affirmation.
No.
it come from the fact that, which for me I'm surprised because I know how you look nice anyway, pre baby and after baby both, you still look fabulous. I think you have like great gene from your mom and your dad together, so
Pigeons.
that's a blessing. But it's about self-confidence. I can say, oh, Kimberly, you beautiful, you fabulous. You're even in the book, I think Michelle Obama, when I start reading, she said that her husband was telling her, I mean, you're a great person, yada yada, but she didn't believe it for herself, so she had
Right.
to do that work. So I think it's super important, because even when you marry, your husband is gonna say you're beautiful. Sometimes they lie, sometimes they
Sometimes
don't,
they
but
lie.
but if you do it for yourself, then that's where the value really comes. Because we call some in confidence, we say it need to stick,
It's gotta
so
stick.
when you tell it to yourself in the mirror every day, it stick. I love it.
Yeah, I do a session on imposter phenomenon too, imposter syndrome.
Ooh,
And one
that's
of
a
the
good
keys
one.
that I give people is to like take a post-it and write this new thought that you want to think about yourself in a place where you see it every day. Because you also have to see it to believe it sometimes, right? So
Oh,
post
this is gonna make it an extended version of the podcast. So you say a word that I like, or I have a different relationship with imposter syndrome.
Mm.
Do you believe in imposter syndrome? Is it real?
I believe that society has made a way where people who look like us, right, feel less than because they've had to prove themselves over and over again. So, do I think it's solely something that women come to earth with? Absolutely not. But do I think that we pick up these messages all throughout that we're not as good, that we have to work harder? Yes. And so that does play, and society plays a huge role
Right.
in imposter phenomenon. So I totally think that it's a thing. I think that we should not put all the blame on people, right?
Mm.
And put some of the blame on society as a whole.
I like how you frame it, because I came to the conclusion that I don't believe it.
Fair?
I I should be everywhere that I enter, every room that I enter, I belong. And for me, I just feel like it's just negative thought, and it's just like microaggression. It was something that, yeah, even when you 7 or 8 year old or 10 or 12, you always have some negative thing in your head, and you have to be like, no, like I want to go run, and there's like, oh, if you go run, somebody's gonna snatch you. There's
Mhm.
always a counter, positive and negative.
Right.
Go
But
ahead.
think about it. So, like, I took my kids to swim lessons one day and I walk in and the guy was like, "Are you supposed to be here? Like, this is not for that." And I was like, my kids are here for swim lessons, but he made an assumption that I wasn't supposed to be here. So that
Mm,
question, if I'm not a person who's competent, who knows who I am and knows who I'm supposed to be, that I can only be a place where God wants me to be, then that even that one question could send you spinning, right? So I think
oh
people get
gosh.
that when they show up in meetings, that maybe they're the only female VP or they're the only black person on leadership team. People are like, "This is the whatever meeting." You're like, "I'm
Oh
supposed to be
yes.
here," you
Are you
know?
here to serve us coffee?
Correct. No, I'm supposed to be here, and this is my chair. Thanks so much. So, I think yes, there are a huge number of people who don't believe in the imposter phenomenon, and they're not wrong. But I do think that this society in particular, has made it where you question yourself because they question you, right?
Right, right. The key is to not tap into it. The
Correct.
key is to realize that, it's just a thing that is trying to deter you. But
Yeah.
then I also learned that, the higher you go, somebody actually say once, I'm trying to remember the person right now, maybe I'll quote it in the podcast later, that if you are actually doing something, and you are not scared or you are not doubting yourself, that means you have not pushed the limit enough. Like
Mhm. Yeah.
even the biggest boxer, before they go in a ring, or the biggest speaker, they always have a little jigger, or like, oh,
Mhm.
I'm scared. That's just part of the course.
Yeah.
So the question is it imposter syndrome, or it's just like natural part of the course? Like you need to be fearless, because
Yeah, I
fear
think
is
it can
part of the.
be I think in our society, we wanna choose one or the other. It can be both.
Okay.
It could be that my dream is really big, or it could be that my path has shown me that maybe I'm not supposed to be here, right? Like, who knows? I think it can be both.
Mm,
It can be and.
okay, I love that.
You don't have to
you
choose one.
you are so good. She's like, you don't gotta choose.
You don't have to choose. It's all of it.
Yes, all of it, and we need to just dismantle it, just like racism.
Yeah. Where's our sledgehammer? Let's get it down.
Cool, cool. That it's always fun when I have the podcast with my friend, because it's like so super difficult to finish. But anyway, I think we are at the end. Thank you so much. How do people follow you, especially to get those Kimberly key, and what else do you got
Yeah.
going on?
hit me up on Instagram. I am KPRW, all my initials. You
Okay.
can also follow me on Facebook usually, but just Instagram would be great. You also can get on our website, kprwconsulting.com, to book a time with me. You can email me at Kimberly at kprwconsulting.com as well if you want to book me for communication, DEI, whatever, generational stuff, whatever, any type of interpersonal skills where we're trying to affect the culture of a workplace or a team environment. I'm here for you.
Awesome. Thank you. I told you this was going to be like amazing. You won't see the time pass. So, thank you so much, Kimberly, for joining us today. Have a wonderful day.
It's been so
Bye.
great. Thanks for having me, Lizette.